Hello, my loves. Maria West here. Welcome to Love, Truth, and Beauty. This is episode 331. And today I have a very, very special guest with me, a sister from One Great Work Network who is going to help me kick off episode 1 of my new video series called Conversations with Women regarding love, truth, and beauty. Please give a warm welcome to Leslie Powers. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Maria. Oh, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yay! Yay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're making this happen. And actually, we're not making it happen. It just kind of flowed. The feminine flow of feminine energy. We don't have to lift a finger because our intentionality just rocks it. And here we are.
Here we
So
are.
how are you, my love?
I'm doing great. Enjoying this Sunday midday. Yeah.
Yay. All right, so let's get to it, okay? Because I know a lot of my viewers are very much interested in how it is that we women are able to awaken to the truth of not just who and what we are, but the truth and the treachery of our systemized indoctrination into this arena called the Matrix as if it's the only reality. What's your story on that? I know that's a huge, broad question, but this is one of the reasons why you're here.
Yes. Yeah. It's a hard question to answer in short form.
Yes.
There's a lot to it. And I would say that there's an aspect of my temperament, that I can identify looking back into childhood,
yes,
that just question things. And I was, looking and observing at the world around me and listening to the things I was taught, and some things just didn't really make sense, or I wondered, like, why are things this way? And that was just a natural part of my personality, and that's been sustained over time.
That's
So,
cool. So it wasn't driven out of you or, just that kind of thing, shamed out of you.
I wouldn't say that. No, I think that I was a kid who, I was the oldest of two girls, and my parents were both working people, working class, and they gave me quite a bit of freedom as a kid. And I was drawn to nature, and I did lots of walking and exploring outside, and, was unencumbered with playing outside and exploring through the woods and having this very active imaginary world. And, and so that was a big part of, I think, my ability to sort of compare and contrast,
Yes.
what I experience in nature and then what I experienced, in the world of people. I always felt a little different. I always felt in a way alone. I think I had a lot of thoughts and dialogues in my head that I didn't hear other people talk about.
I know that one. It's very, how old were you when you realized that? I'm curious.
I remember being in elementary school and reflecting on, these thoughts, around being a girl, and how I was very naturally athletic. And I was, I remember being in gym class and noticing that I had a lot more like care and motivation to like use my body and had capability, and that it didn't seem to be appreciated. It wasn't appreciated by the gym teacher. The other girls in the class didn't seem to care. And, attention was, put on boys more than me. And I remember thinking, like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And questioning things pretty young in elementary school.
Yeah.
And I even had questions about, like, what is God? I remember, being at least probably junior high and really questioning, okay, well, what is God? What does God look like, feel like? How do I know if God is here? I was very naturally resistant to the Christian religion. And I don't know why. There was nothing that my parents did.
Interesting.
Yeah, they didn't say or do anything that would, make me not want to go to church. We did go, and I would listen to the minister, and I would I remember one day he said that animals didn't have souls. And I was like, I don't think so. That's
Yeah,
not, I
that
don't
I
agree with
didn't buy that one either.
that. Yeah.
No.
I remember laying on the floor with my dog and gazing in her eyes and experiencing a depth of,
Yes.
of relationship and a being and behind those eyes. And I started to question, like, what makes this minister special? Why, what gives him the ability to tell us what is and what
Right.
isn't. So I just,
Right.
started to look at my own experience and trust some of my own intuition and insights. And I decided at a certain point I wasn't going to be in anything, especially when it came to religion. I was like,
Yes.
well, how could there be, all these religions around the world and only one of them is right? No, that doesn't make sense. So I was like,
It's odd, isn't it? It just,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like the logic doesn't line up. The math doesn't line up. It just is contrary to that sort of innate connection that we have to nature. And I so relate to you, communing with my dogs and my cats and
Mhm.
having that conversation. There was a conversation, there was an exchange, a telepathic, psychic feeling exchange. And then to be told they don't have souls, it's like, oh, so that's your excuse to harm them and to, try to separate yourself.
Yeah.
So I get that. I feel you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I fairly young, I decided I was on a journey to discover what is the truth, spiritually underneath, like what's the thread that may weave through all religions. And I wanted to
Yes.
find out what that was because I figured that would be the closest thing to the truth. Um, and, then I had a lot of detours, in my life too. So there were periods of time where my exploration wasn't as intense,
Mhm.
but I always had an interest in
What
yoga and
what were some of the detours, for example? Let's talk
Mhm.
about the sort of detours or distractions, or perhaps it was a deepening into our assumptions and our suppositions, and then coming out of it and kind of up leveling and getting closer to the truth, or seeing it and going, oh, yikes.
Yes.
What were your experiences in those?
Yeah, I think that what you're describing as what I'm calling a detour really is a deepening,
Yes.
and then you pop out the other side and with a, more wisdom. But yeah, so a lot of my detours in life were around relationships, getting into a lot of turbulent relationships. And I also had in my teen years, I practiced Taekwondo. I was, like I said, athletic, and I
Yay, me
happened
too.
to, yeah, yeah. I related to that part of your story. Yeah. And I had ability and I had gone a lot of, up until then, like not really being, I felt like seen. And then when I started Taekwondo, my instructor saw my potential and told me like, hey, Leslie, you could be national champion. And I was like, really? I could? And I was like, well, let me see if I
Cool.
can do that. So then I worked hard and then I, became national champion. And it was an
Awesome.
interesting experience for me about how you could, we go through life without having an idea in our head. Like we don't see something in ourselves. And so that idea can't manifest because it's
Yes.
not in the place of the mind.
Right.
And having some reflection back from other people in my life were uh, like they gave me little breadcrumbs, little scraps of things that like opened up my mind to think, well, could that be true? Is that true about me? And one was about, becoming a very good in Taekwondo. And then the other was about being intelligent. Like, it's funny, like in ninth grade, my English teacher in front of my mother said, she's sharp as a whip. And it was like, I think the first time in my entire life that anyone actually told me I was smart. And and when I got that feedback,
Beautiful.
all of a sudden I'm like, I'm smart. Okay, I'm going to live up to that. And
Sweet.
it's funny how,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's so great because those people are those special touchstones, those
Mhm.
reflections of our amazingness, our divinity,
Mhm.
because they can see, and because they have that that beautiful capacity to not just witness, but to also share and acknowledge, you know. And it seems to me that we need more of that.
Yes.
We need more of that encouragement and that witnessing. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I want to hear more about this. Actually, it's not just an unfoldment, it's a blossoming,
Yes.
really, of your true nature,
Yeah.
and aligning with all that you are and
Mhm.
always have been.
Yes, and opening up to different possibilities of who I could become, and then experience, following, sort of a combination of following my inner desire, my interests, like going to the Taekwondo school and diving into that, and then getting feedback, and then that feeds on itself, right? So I have a whole story along the whole Taekwondo world, which I ended up being a pretty good athlete, but then I had all this angst. So I think I'm a big thinker. I have lots of angst. I felt like I needed to be very pure and clear about what I was doing. And at a certain point in the martial art path, I felt burnt out, and I felt discouraged with some of the politics. And I decided, and it was during a time when Taekwondo was going to be in the Olympic Games, a long time ago, dating myself, in 1988. And I was on the team in 86. And then I competed again at nationals in 87, and I won nationals, but I decided not to continue. So I was part of this sort of controversy.
Wow.
Where I chose not to go to the team trials. I let the second place person kind of go in my place. She ended up, incidentally, getting a gold medal in the 88 Olympic Games.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
and totally, like, this was her path. She ended up becoming a stunt double in Hollywood, in like some big movies. And I had no interest in any of that, right? I was kind of like, Olympics, it's pretty cool. I want to see how good I can be at this, but I don't think I really want to go that path. And people couldn't understand that. So I kind of bowed out, went left, went into social work, kind of committed to a career, got involved, got in with a man, got married, went through tremendous turbulence in that arena of love. And those I would say was like the first really dark initiation
Yes.
in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind going a little bit into that without any,
Sure.
discomfort?
I think I married a man who had come from a very abusive home life with a very narcissistic father. He was from Mexico City. And I remember being drawn to him, and then we were on almost like our first date. And he told me this story of his life. And I remember feeling overwhelmed. And I was like, excuse myself, went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, okay, Leslie, either you back out or you go forward. It was like very bizarre how my brain worked. It was like,
Wow.
either you go forward and it's going to be a roller coaster ride, or you stop now and make your decision. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, I'm going to go forward. I think I need to have this experience in my life. And I did. And it was very intense over the course of about 8 years of a lot of almost like losing myself to a man who had a very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of quality to him.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had given my heart out like this, and then he took my heart and like played with it and hurt it, and I ended up all topsy-turvy. And then I had to find myself again, and I had to find my self-respect and my center, and make a stand and a claim for what I was willing to experience for the future or not. So then I left. And, but and it's sort of like my experience with relationship is that just when I think I've learned something and I'm wiser, then I stumble into the next blind spot and get hit sideways.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are powerful relationships.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
I so can relate to what you're sharing, because it's almost like it's the trial by fire, where it's an initiation into not just deepening your relationship with yourself, but also owning the divinity and the wisdom that you already have innately, but through the contrasting experiences. I mean, we learn by contrasting experiences, and there's nothing wrong with it. And there's, I think too many things in like pop psychology and the pop in new age bullshit, where there's a sort of spiritual bypass to the journey, and almost a blaming and a shaming at the same time. So it's this double-edged sword where we probably knew better, and yet we didn't listen. But perhaps rather than arguing with the reality that we did go forward in these challenges to really extract the golden nuggets. And it's part of, I think, what makes you very astute and masterful in navigating relationships and the light and the dark of it, the polarities of all of that.
Yes.
And then applying natural law, applying the Hermetic principles to all of this. And it makes you, I think, just so much more masterful and effective in terms of you holding space, not just for yourself, but for the countless men and women that are attracted to your work, that are going to learn, like right now, our realities, our universes are intersecting. And when this goes live and when it gets replayed, people are going to go, yes, 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 yes. Because there is no right or wrong way to do things or to live our lives. It's just how things unfold. So I think relationships are probably one of the most powerful schools.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, it's a boot camp for our autonomy and our sovereignty.
Yes.
By way of losing ourselves, quote unquote. And I think that's one way to look at it, losing ourselves. I think another way of looking at it is the way we give to another, because we see them perhaps as ourselves. We see them as their true divine creative natures, and yet perhaps they can't meet us in that place. They can't see themselves, so they can't see us in that way. And we end up being the triggers for the sort of knee-jerk reactions, responses that, I mean, they just appear for all intents and purposes as abusive, as horrific, as their perpetrators. And so, I mean, my hat is off to you.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I look back at the various relationships, I can pinpoint moments where I had some intuition about what I was going to get into.
Yes.
And also making a choice to do it.
Yes.
So I can't like blame anyone for anything else, because I know that I had a soul decision here.
Yes.
And there was also a need, I think, for, where two people are coming together in their incompleteness, their wounding, their stuckness, their stagnancy. And then it's through that synergy, that clashing, or that experience of coming together, that then both people get pushed to grow. And sometimes it's painful and confusing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say that, I think it's true that the men that I've been in relationship with have all grown and had some transformational experience from my presence, from my being, and I also from theirs. And I don't carry any bitterness. Like I can say that even,
Yeah.
kind of the most recent, really hard relationship where I came out like feeling like I was limping, like I just left a battle, like, oh my God, I got out of that one.
Yeah.
I've been able to work through those emotions of anger and to come out the other side where I really see all of those as gifts
Yeah.
and opportunities, and
Yeah.
don't hold resentment to
Yeah.
the men.
And that's such a beautiful thing, because it seems to me that we have this sort of weaponized woundology within the matrix where we get to indulge it in a way where it just perpetuates and gets bigger and gets stronger, and we can just keep pointing the finger at other people. And yet, when you're actually working with natural law and you're actually in the process of owning your sovereignty, and you start realizing, oh shit, it's all me.
Yes.
I'm doing this.
Yes.
And that is it's a razor sharp line to walk.
It is. And it's filled with lots of emotion.
Yes.
And so I married the father of my children in 1998, had my first daughter in 1999, and then I had a son in 2000, and then a daughter in 2008. And that relationship was, again, like very challenging. And it was a shattering of this naive view I had of the world and how I could sort of do it all.
Yes.
I could just be everything,
That
right?
is such a program. It's complete, utter mind control.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, I did my darn best, but I took on really probably way too much and in a sense failed. Like I can look back, and this is a more recent, my youngest daughter, who's now about just turning 15, she was 1 when I left their dad. And so I had a 10 and a 8.5 and a 1. And then went on this single mother's journey without minimal support and a lot of interference, working full time, the pressures of single parenthood. But also when I left that marriage, I knew that I was hungry for the next phase of my transformation and my spiritual journey. And I started to immerse myself in information, knowledge, metaphysical, spiritual explorations, to the point where I was every free moment, I was listening to a podcast. I was, just hungry, soaking in information. When my kids were with their father, I was off up in Mount Shasta or Ashland, and I was going to the goddess temple, and I was climbing the mountain, and I was, exploring some different parts of myself that I hadn't. And just, it felt like a mushrooming of growth happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look back and it's kind of a blur almost, all of that.
Yeah.
As I was trying to be there with my children. And also, they were going through a lot of their stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't even realize how intense it was for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I look back now and I'm like, whoa, we really carried a lot.
Yeah. And would you say, in hindsight, that your experience and the experience of your children, that you were all having similar experiences and similar conversations internally and perhaps externally with friends and cohorts? Would you say that's probably true?
I don't know. My kids weren't able, I think, to integrate what was
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm.
And in honesty, I think I had a bit of an illusion
Okay.
about what their experience was. And I was in a somewhat of a survival mode
Okay.
where I wasn't as fully present emotionally with them as they needed.
Mhm.
And I think that, or I didn't really recognize the impact of the situation on them as being as difficult as it was. So
Okay.
there's been a lot of unpacking
Wow.
that I've been doing with my kids,
Okay, that's
you know.
awesome.
Yeah. Because at the time we weren't able to like articulate what was really happening to each of us. And there was a
Yeah.
lot of there was a lot of arguing among my kids and challenges, before and after visits with their dad. Like it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
hard, the split family thing. And
It is really, that is such a difficult terrain because it's a slippery slope, number one. And there's too many moving parts to manage. You can't manage it. There's no way to control it.
yeah,
And our kids, they got their own journeys going on too. And so,
right.
yeah, yeah,
And each of my kids has I mean, all kids are special, but I kind of look back now and I see each of my child has their own depth and their own unique, they're all each very different. And we didn't know quite how to make sense of this almost like a decade of our lives. And at a certain point, then my kids became very direct with me about their experience and pretty
oh,
confrontive.
how is that?
That was hard. It's
Yeah,
still hard,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is still very hard. Oh, okay. Well, let's go there. Let's go there. How did you navigate that? Because that seems to be something that is a very common thread in, well, my private practice and the programs that I'm teaching online, where it's like the reckoning of our how we raise our children, of the way we mothered or the ways we didn't show up, the
Yeah.
ways we did show up that weren't,
It's a very sensitive area, I think,
yeah,
for all mothers.
yeah,
And there's a tremendous pressure on mothers to be very selfless. And the
yeah,
myth of the good, there's sort of
yeah,
a myth around this mother image. And I don't think I naturally fit into that at all. And I did my best to try to balance everything all the time,
hmm, hmm,
and tried to fill my own cup and be there for them and be a soul supporter. And in hindsight, I realized that I didn't do 100% good job at any of it, in a sense.
yeah,
And so when it's hard because as an adult, we see things in certain ways and we kind of have expectations that our kids will adapt to certain things,
yeah,
and we hold them to a certain standard of
yeah,
behaving, and then you know that could involve discounting some of their emotional experience. I think it's very common in our culture, right?
yes, yes,
Up
it
it
is.
up, we're
Yeah,
all in this together, let's get through it.
yeah.
And then
It's not that bad.
right,
I
and
caught
then
myself saying that one day, and I was like, oh, and apologizing for it because it
yeah,
just came out.
yeah, and then when I pretty much always raise my kids to be pretty open, to be, and so they felt safe at when the time came right for them to really confront me about what they saw as my bad judgment. Let's say
Mhm.
with a relationship, a boyfriend that I brought into their world that they didn't like, and like,
Mhm.
"Mom, what were you thinking?" Like what? And I had to be very humble because for quite a while I was not really going there.
Mhm.
And then, but there came a point where I realized, well, I can't can't deny their experience, their reality. I have to be humble, and I have to take it and receive their hurt and their
Ooh, yeah,
anger. And of
yeah.
course, they're putting it on me because I've been really the only consistent primary
Yeah,
adult in their life. I mean,
yeah.
their dad was there, but it was, intermittent and not as wasn't as safe a relationship for them to confront.
Mhm, mhm.
And so I think it's important that we humble ourselves in the face of our children.
Yes,
They're there
yes.
with them and hear what they have to say. And we're all going to face those experiences where we have regret and
Yes.
guilt, and realize where we weren't the best mother,
Yeah, yeah.
um and yet there's a repair process. And what so in the whole attachment, human attachment, emotional attachment that starts in infancy to a caregiver, we can't expect anyone to any caregiver, any mother or father to be perfect,
Mhm.
but hopefully that there's a repair that happens and a willingness to come back and be humble and
Yeah, yeah,
allow, and make an adjustment.
yeah.
Right. So I
Can
feel like
you speak more to that process of repair? Because this is really,
Mhm.
repair is really important.
Yeah.
And I know that I know that for myself, that has been that's been a lot of my focus, I'd have to say, in the last 15 years of my sort of personal my personal up leveling is making repairs where I'm able to, and really checking into my resistance to the repairs where I just sort of feel like, really, I have to do that. And it is very humbling. So I want to hear your, yeah, I want to hear your process and what you would suggest with that, because that piece, it is humbling, and it can be, I think it also is a slippery slope, because
Mhm.
it's a place, I know for me, making myself totally wrong to the point where I can utilize it as a way to beat myself up,
Mhm.
and not let go that I fucked up.
Right. Yes. I look back, okay, to especially the time after when I made the decision to leave my children's dad, and I've looked back and asked, okay, was that the best decision for my soul? It was.
Mhm. Yeah,
I needed to, or I would have lost myself to a point where it would have been detrimental,
yeah.
you know, and I can't guarantee in any way that if I had stayed, that would have been good for my children, and that perhaps leaving was, in the big picture, the best thing for
Mhm.
all of our best interests. And yet it was a very difficult experience, and I underestimated what it was going to take. I mean, I was up at 5 a.m. for 9 months doing like before I went to work, doing intensive like spiritual work, preparing to leave that relationship,
Whew.
because I knew that it was going to be very difficult.
Mhm.
And then it was very, very difficult. And I propelled into with a determination to not lose myself. And I wanted to role model a woman who is I guess, that is not willing to sacrifice herself
Yes.
entirely, right? In the name of being a mother and a
Mhm.
wife. and
Mhm.
and so I have a compassion for myself, and I understand how important that journey was,
Wow.
and that I did my best. I know that.
Yeah.
And I also know that in a lot of ways, I didn't do the job I wish I had, but we learn a lot in hindsight.
Yes, we do.
And so when we learn in hindsight, I think it's important that we face the feelings and feel them, those painful feelings of regret, remorse. The pain, for me, the hardest part is when I can feel my kids suffering.
Yes.
And when I feel and I look back and I realize in hindsight they're suffering and that I didn't fully see it and I wasn't fully there for them, that's where the pain is.
Okay.
And I also know that I did my best regardless. It wasn't because I didn't try or didn't care. It was because I was imperfect, as we all are.
Yeah.
And we learn as we go. So now, by giving my kids the opportunity to share with me very not tactfully at all, but very bluntly.
Just come out with it.
And sometimes very harshly, harsher than I really deserve.
Yeah.
But I see myself as I want to hold this container for their emotion now. And I have a part of me that wants to get defensive because I have a thing about truth and fairness. And when I hear them say something that isn't really true, I want to correct it.
Yes.
And
I hear you.
Of realizing, okay, that's not what it's about right now. I need to validate like their emotional experience of that.
Yeah.
And maybe right now is not the time for us to go back and process it in the detail that I would like. So I notice what's helpful for me is that I notice like my 23-year-old who she's like living independently. She was very much wanted to be independent. She moved out and at 18 and she is like moved out of state but we've become closer and we process, and I'm starting to see where she in her maturity and as she's going out in the world, she's able to see gifts that she received from me as a mother. And so she'll give me these little nuggets of things that are, help.
Yeah.
Really, I realize, okay, I don't have to be so hard on myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was still, who I am and who I was powerful in itself.
Yeah.
If I didn't do everything right.
Wow. That's intense. That's really intense. And I just want to, I want to thank you so much because the container that you hold, and I want to acknowledge this, and especially, I've been having so many conversations with people about the deep masculine and the deep feminine within. The space that you were holding, that container was a combination of the masculine presence and the feminine spirit. And that container, you were doing both mom and both dad.
Yeah.
Being the authority and also being the inspiration and being the caretaker in so many different ways.
Yeah. It's complex.
It is very complex.
Yeah. And then having a son he's 22, who went through a lot. He has kind of different learning styles, different ways of processing and struggled in school. And we went through a lot there. I got to see the school, a lot about the school system, through his life and how things hurt him. The school system hurt him, how misunderstood he was in so many ways. And watching him grow, so for example, he is struggling now a lot with his relationship to his father and has chosen not to have a relationship with him right now. And so he has his journey there. And so there's all sorts of you know, once they grow up, you know, so to speak, there's actually, I feel like, when some real parenting and connection can happen in those like 19, 20, 21,
Yes.
22, those really important years, I feel like. And then I have my 15-year-old who's just been putting me through it in a lot of ways. Also really strong
Yeah.
character.
They do that at that age. Holy moly. The undiluted truths that come out of their mouths is like,
Yeah. Yeah. And the exaggerated truth
yes,
too.
of course.
From a big
Because
place of
everything is really, well, and it's intense because it they're getting hit with all these hormonal cocktails as well, and the peer pressure and the sort of coming of age of their own authority, and challenging you and the world and reality at every step, which
yeah.
it's wonderful to witness. It's not so good when you're on the receiving end
Yeah.
of the wrath and the confusion and the
I know.
all of that.
I often really, it helps me to have my 23-year-old when I'm going through with my 15-year-old, because I can kind of see light at the end of the tunnel, some shifts. It's like the rhythm, the Hermetic principle of rhythm.
Right.
And it plays out in our lives through the different phases of development.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it really does. That is a very, very good point. And also in the theater of our daily lives, how it all just like,
yeah.
And to witness that.
And even the rhythm of our own awakening, and when we're in the midst of something, we don't always see it. We have to sort of go through this experience and peak, and then sort of come out, coming down and out. And then we can look and see with new eyes and integrate that and experience and look at the emotions and realize them. Sometimes we don't do that when we're in it.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Let's go to the Hermetic principles and your discovery of them, your learning them, and then it's their application. Each principle has its own application. And what has your process been in terms of applying them to your wealth, your breadth, your intense life trajectory with all of this? Have you done like a review excavation of these major turning points and moments in your life?
I have.
I love it. I love it.
Say that I probably haven't done it as methodically as I could, like in terms of pen and paper and writing it,
Yeah.
But in terms of the way my mind works, lots of reflection and lots of like, what's the lesson that I can learn? And I didn't formally learn the Hermetic principles until just a few years ago, honestly. So I was more in this metaphysical world, yoga, meditation, kind of some new age stuff. And then it wasn't until 2018 that I was introduced to, say, like the work of Mark Passio and some other folks, Michael Tessarian, some Sethic Esposa, I started to really want to learn more about my ancestry and the Nordic, Celtic, traditions. And then very specifically, did look into the Hermetic principles and so watching, Mark Passio's work through the podcast was a very important aspect of connecting the dots, but also really confirming for me that there is intentional evil in the world.
Yes,
so this was a turning point because I was, social worker, kind of on the liberal side, very much a, rose-colored glasses, a bit of, wanting to go help take care of the underdog. I never really attached to any particular 100% to any particular label or political party, but I think I went through life with a certain naivete, despite all these experiences. And I remember grappling with this idea. Is there really evil in the world, or is it just a continuum of learning and ignorance? And all these people that are in positions of power, are they really bad people? Are they evil people? And I really didn't want to really believe in that evil.
It is shocking.
Yeah. And when, and I would, so I'm a person who along the way, I have a element of my awareness that I would call like attuned to synchronicities and intuition. So I often don't make decisions just out of pure common sense, like logic, but kind of like either an emotional or an intuitive hit. And I will notice, oh, I ran into that person 3 times. I need to talk to them now. Or, oh, I noticed this bird and, I'm going to, whatever. Like I just had to have this as part of my guidance system. And that has led me to a lot of unfolding into learning, into transformation.
Yeah.
And so through following some of those synchronicities, I met people who then it turned me on to different teachers and mentors. And then having these crash courses in intense ways of like, oh my gosh, it's like transforming my whole template of the world. And then seeing things different. And then I can look back on my life and I could say, oh, I see the satanic forces in action in the world of sport. I can see where, as an adolescent girl, I was pulled into these various kind of shady pathways that bordered on, a little bit of trafficking even. I can see where the school system is really pretty evil.
It's so deceptively geared and engineered to like have it all be right in front of you.
Yes. And then all of a sudden you see where narcissism and psychopathy is at play in the world. And there's this very self-serving agenda, and how many, good people often naively get entangled with
the tenets of Satanism are, when you just, whoa.
So then I'm waking up to seeing all this, and waking up to seeing the dynamics of my relationships and my relationship to narcissism and my own fears around emotional vulnerability, or my control issues, or my avoidance, or, and just started to unpack all of this and realizing that we get stuck energetically if we don't unpack and feel and metabolize all of these things. But a really big part of it for me was about reclaiming my own true nature and appreciating myself, like back to that little girl. And developing my own inner protector, my own responsibility for how I relate to the not toxic, but the wounded, wounded masculine in the world, and the ways that evil is being perpetrated against us. So I had to just really open my eyes to see that it's real, not be naive. Right? Not just think it's going to be okay. But very much. And so then the whole idea of, all is mind, how important it is to really look at our mind and look at our thoughts,
yes,
our emotions and our intuitions, and get to see ourselves in real honest, taking off the rose-colored glasses, really being raw,
Yeah.
that recognizing where our power lies inside ourselves through the mind and the mental principle. And really, of course, the course, I've become that whole bit about synchronicity and noticing. I see that as the correspondence principle at play in life.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
seeing the echoes in nature and the experience of how we're connected and how we can read nature. We can read the things that are happening in front of us.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's all related. There's the correspondence, the reflection.
Yes.
Whatever is out there is also happening within.
Yes.
And that checking in, I think is just so important. And that's really been a thread that I've been hearing throughout you sharing your life, is there has been that, that internal, what is it, that your compass has been true. Even if there was no direct knowledge, awareness of the Hermetic principles and natural law, you intuitively felt that you needed to remove yourself and your children from this environment with your ex-husband.
Yeah.
Because that masculine wasn't a safe place. So you actually activated your own masculine protector and made the decision.
Yes.
As difficult as it was, and the consequences after that decision. Yeah.
It's really interesting, the whole gender principle, and realizing, as my nature, my natural is definitely wants to be in the more feminine aspects of flow and intuition, reception, but I've had to really activate the masculine principle of doing, and and when it comes, but I've realized especially when it comes to parenting, that it's for me been almost impossible, it feels like, to really do both, to be both. And that our children of the world really need masculine men and feminine women.
Absolutely.
Healthy
I
interaction.
1000% agree with you. Yeah.
And so as and I've reflected a lot, because in terms of even my parenting style, I'm not a super consequence kind of parent, authoritative. I struggle a lot with being very consequence oriented, and the structure and I want to flow. I want to be.
I want the kids to be as they are.
Yeah.
And
right.
And let them do their thing.
So the whole gender piece, I'm observing now, and I'm seeing, looking within myself, the way that's played out, and also seeing the effects on my children of that, right? So that's, part of my observation contemplation at this time. I definitely look at the cause and effect principle in a new way throughout my life, where I'm seeing the responsibility aspect to choices and ignorance. And, and being maybe too spontaneous, too impulsive, or where I've had a blind spot or a veil, and just looking at how all these principles have played out in the course of my life.
Isn't it just it's really fascinating to me. I know for me it's been an addiction of sorts, and a good one, but as you said at the beginning, the whole mentalizing. So I have a tendency to overthink things and overdo, You know, it's part of my Capricorn rising nature. It's like, I'm just gonna fucking systemize this so it's all makes sense. And one of my tools, I'm into mind maps. I don't know if you know what mind maps are. Lord have mercy. You know, I'm kind of extricating myself because people are like, no, don't do the mind maps. Just be and flow in that feminine directive way that can seem chaotic and seem, you know, just kind of like all over the map. But in actuality, it's not, because it's like our feeling, being heart-centered and choosing that, the heart leads us to what's really important.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing that throughout our conversation here.
Yeah. Yeah. And always coming back with my kids to the heart, you know, and the love, and not giving up, you know, always showing back up.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes with my, you know, with humility, and sometimes with firmness and, you know, clarity. And but yeah, and so I'm working as a clinical social worker. I do psychotherapy, and I have been working individually with people for a number of years. And so I've been thinking in the last few years about how the Hermetic principles can play out in how we can heal ourselves too, and use, of course, you know, our thoughts. And the principle of mentalism is very clear. You know, working with our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, understanding cause and effect, recognizing the rhythms in our life for rest.
Yes.
You know, and
so important. The whole resting thing. It's kind of my new reality, up-leveled reality, is allowing sleep and rest.
Yes.
And not, you know, bulldozing through those times when I really need to be resting and taking downtime.
Yeah. I went go, you know, because I was, of course, trying to do it all. And I just would go.
Yeah. And we're rewarded. We're rewarded for that.
And now that phase is sort of past. And now I'm kind of into I feel like being more and slowing down, but I'm still holding a pretty high pace just because I'm living in the matrix and I have to make a living and I pay the rent.
Right.
But mentally, I'm much more relaxed, and I allow a lot more rest and slow down time when I can. And lately, for sure, feeling the need to sleep a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the topic, let's go to the well, you know, the polarity of being and doing, and the whole resting thing. Let's talk about self-care, self-love, because that is it's such an important topic. And I'm finding that it's not just important for us women, it's important for the men.
Yes.
And I have more and more men coming to me about, okay, what's your best girly thing? Because my girl, in using that language, my girl wants this. And so tell us some of your juicy, wonderful self-care, self-love practices.
So I think my purest is dance. And this goes back to my father, who was a musician and played the keyboard. He had a piano and an organ in the house, and we had a harp for a while. And he would go and play music, and it was like he was the Pied Piper, and I would just follow him to his room, and I would dance when he would play.
Aww.
And it was like one of my like favorite memories of my whole childhood. And I feel like the gift of dance, or the calling from within me to move my body and dance, has been very it's like a truth about me. And as a teenager, I dated a guy in rock bands and danced a lot, right? And then there was a period of my life where I wasn't really dancing. And part of what I brought back into my life was dance. And I did belly dance, and I, you know, connected with some temple dancers, and I reclaimed my, you know, my own ecstatic dance. You know, that's one of the beautiful things that I enjoyed in more of the new age world.
Yes.
And and then was introduced to partner dance, which like opened up a whole nother level of fun and taught me a bit about relaxing and not being the lead.
Yes.
And just following, and that what that can feel like. So the last decade has really been for me about cultivating the dance, and in both structured and just loose sort of ecstatic form. And so every Tuesday I dance salsa. I have a dance partner and we dance hard, every Tuesday night. And I also enjoy, because right now my work balance is a little bit off. I'm not in the best balance right now, because I also love exercise. Exercise has always been for me a necessity for my mental health.
Yes.
And and because I was also an athlete, like I understand the discipline of being really in good shape. And, so it's kind of hard for me to not
no, it's kind of
there.
It's one of my things. And it's a requirement. I still have a bag downstairs, where I practice, my kicks and my punches and all the forms and stuff like that after all these years.
Yeah, I went away for a long time, but I keep kind of coming back in little ways. So this past year, I got back into some self-defense and martial arts stuff. And my favorite thing to sort of unwind is to just really attune to my body and what it's needing in terms of movement. So it might be that I just really need to stretch, and I got this tension in my neck, and and just follow that and movement and turn on music and just sort of allow myself to express. And to me, that's this feminine embodied expression. And it's also attuning me to the ways that I hold on to a lot of mental tension. And I'm talking to people with very intense issues a lot. And I really have to be pretty conscious of moving things through. So
right. And letting that move, especially this area here, it just is so, it accumulates. It's like emails and the texts and the social media stuff and the, communications that need to happen. And it's like, hurry up, chop, 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 chop. It's like,
So I'll just, wipe off. I can feel it. I'll shake it off. I'll move it. I've studied a little bit of Peruvian energy medicine, and I do some of the visual energy visualizations, but I really like to embody it somehow, not just in the imagination, although there's some effectiveness in that, but also through the body. And in an ideal day, I'm getting outside intermittently through the day, and I'm interacting with the plants or even picking up dog shit. Like, I look forward, let me go out and pick up the dog shit. It's like funny. But I'm like,
it's a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual cleaning the cat box and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, it's cool.
Yeah. And
right on.
And so, and being aware too, like of the throat. And this is an area which I want to develop more, but really, humming, singing more. Like, I've always thought, like, I don't have a good singing voice. I'm not a singer. I can't sing. So I wouldn't sing. But I've come to think, like, I like singing.
Yeah.
I want to
Why
sing.
not?
I want to make sound. I'm going to make sound. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's
awesome.
like letting go for that. Right.
That's so good. And who knows? Maybe you really are a great singer.
I could become maybe a better singer, maybe not great. But, and then there's the balance too, with, I need solitude. I need to have time when I'm by myself and I can just sort of be. Sometimes I get a lot of just sitting and looking, at my environment, like I'm looking at it for the first time, and then just really appreciating the colors and the shapes and the beauty, and just being in my body, in this space, in relationship to what's around me. Just simple things, like that.
Yeah, that's a very simple, yet probably a very challenging practice. And especially for a lot of people who are like, they've got the shiny object syndrome kind of thing, and it just the mind flitting around and flitting around, and you
Yeah.
start noticing things in your own environment that, and you remember, oh yeah, I put it there on purpose.
Yeah.
And
Or,
when was the
oh,
last
that
time
needs a little cleaning.
yes, there's dust bunnies everywhere. Or
Yeah.
what is that?
Notice that door was so dirty, you know, and you have to watch all that, right? And giving time even for like housework, you know, when I look forward to having the spaciousness, right? You know, so self-care is really like giving yourself some
Yes,
spaciousness
yes,
to, and then just enjoying the most mundane things. You know?
yes, yeah,
And then, you know, connecting with people. Like I love the intellectual connections I have with people, and doing conversations and talking about principles and philosophy. Like I just get a thrill out of it. I love doing it. I like going to local gatherings. We've cultivated some local friends where, you know, we have some alignment, and whether it's philosophical or around, you know, developing more independence from, you know, around food production, and knowing
cool,
that we have people to turn to if we're in a pinch, you
nice,
know, in the matrix,
nice, nice.
all of
Yeah,
that.
the face-to-face time, I'm hungry for more and more of that,
Yeah.
you know, and I really look forward to the day the fear porn really starts to evaporate, you know, because I'm a touchy-feely kind of person, and, you know, I'm just like hugging everybody, smooching everybody. People are like, still backing the hell up. Oh, here she comes. Miss
Where
Hug.
I
I
live,
know.
been pretty lucky that the community I'm in didn't go so extreme.
Yeah.
And I've had a subgroup of people that didn't buy into all of that, and so I was able to maintain a certain sense of normalcy
Yeah.
with a subgroup of people. And really, you know, I think for me too, the other thing that I've cultivated in my life that I didn't do enough of for a lot of years was laughing. And, and
It's
just,
one of my things. It's
yes,
important. Yeah. Isn't it
finding
just
the
wonderful?
people and just being silly, and getting to the point of comfort in myself where I don't feel like I have to like censor myself,
Yes.
try to be appear a certain
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
or
And that's all that affects all the throat chakra energy. It
yeah.
also affects heart energy and the way we navigate in our bodies. So I totally get you on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being ourselves, warts
Yes,
and all.
freeing.
It's
It's
very freeing.
wonderful
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get to that place,
Yeah.
and to feel a relative peace, you know, a general peace with the journey of our lives.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though I still am going through some processing and some deep stuff, and I'll have periods of, you know, grieving things, I know that this is liberating,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and that this is a safe and calm enough time in a way internally for me to go to that next depth
Yeah.
of processing.
So great. So
Yeah.
as far as your next things, what do you have on the horizon for yourself, personally,
Yeah.
professionally?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, seems like there's a lot going on there. So I left. I worked at an integrative health center for about 9 years that had a lot of wonderful things. That had a lot of wonderful aspects to it. But I reached a point where I was no longer compatible with them, related to the mandates around mask wearing and
Yeah.
jabs and tests and all these things. So I made a stand that I could not be in congruence. I could not work there and be in alignment with myself. So I left, and have been seeing myself as more of a free agent, juggling some different, you know, agencies that I'm doing therapy. I do some clinical supervision and I do psychotherapy, and I work with a local agency a little bit. And then I have some private pay clients.
Yeah.
And I have another agency that I'm doing some online therapy with, and all of this. So I'm ultimately wanting to move away from agencies and away from insurances.
Yeah.
And less dependent on licenses, and so forth, to become more in the voluntarist way of operating. And it's a process. And because I still have, my 15-year-old and my 22-year-olds living with me, I'm not quite ready to just like downsize and take some of the risks yet. I will in a few years. But I'm moving in that direction kind of slowly. And I'm enjoying that. And I have some visions of where I want to go. So
sweet.
I'm integrating that, my main work now, with the work I'm doing in the One Great Work. So I have my website, alivethrive.life, and there's an integration there of the mental health work and the psychological healing with the knowledge of the Hermetic principles and natural law.
I love it. I love it. We'll have all of Leslie's info shown in the show notes below.
Oh, I think I forgot to send you stuff. Shoot.
It's okay.
It's my bio.
Okay. I've done my homework. So, but these are important things, because I know so many folks who are wanting to make the transition from status to lesser and lesser status things. And, it's so funny because there's so many people out there who are, immersing themselves in the truth and freedom movements. And we find out certain realities of, the matrix shitstones. And we're supposed to go instant awake and go cold turkey and then extricate yourself, and then we're living off the land and we're off grid. It's like, no, kids. It is not the whole transition, and whatever trajectory transition, this is step by step by step by step. Yes. Because of the intensity of the indoctrination and the systems that we are waltzing in and out of in the matrix, and then having children, and then it really is a step by step by step by step in really figuring out, using like what you're saying. You have these in these visions about how you want things. You're gathering information. You have children to take care of. And so I just want to put that out there, because there's so many people, they just get overwhelmed. It's like, how can I do this? I've got to do this yesterday. And it's like, no, kids, it's like step by step by step by step, because everything has a certain consequence to it. And you want to do it in a way where the feminine flow, the feminine flow will go where the masculine focus is directed. And we have to have the mental, the first principle of mentalism. You have to get that really dialed in terms of the universe. What is in the universe that you are materializing? What are the qualities and all that? So I thank you so much for sharing that, because, and then you have the people that you are working with, who are really looking to you for your inspiration and for that space holding. And, what is waltzing in and out of the matrix anyway? It's our consciousness.
Yes.
And
our awareness.
Yes.
Being conscious and deliberate as we make choices.
Yes.
And we know we're making choices now.
Here.
We know the principles at play within, this dance that we have, this waltz that we have with an institution. And then I think we have these things to weigh, it's because we're thinking about cause and effect, consequence to our actions, and we are very entangled in this matrix.
Yes, it is.
There's
very, very tricky
to pulling out a plug, And sometimes if we were to pull out everything at once, the consequence may be too much to bear
Mhm.
to survive, even, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so it is like a dance and a balance and a process over time and a consciousness, right? So in my mind, recognizing how many ways I'm entangled in,
Yes.
the system, the government, from the point of, carrying a license and
Yeah.
following these rules that are kind of
Right.
arbitrary, and deciding, if I'm going to not follow them, am I willing to accept the consequence of that?
Mhm.
You have to take responsibility for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes we can be very foolhardy and, saying I'm not going to comply, but not
Yes.
think through the ripple effects of that
Yes.
decision.
And there are ripple effects,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I think it's
which
only
can
fair.
put you in the crosshairs of some things that you don't want to be in the crosshairs.
You could
It's
end up even more incarcerated in
Yes.
the
Yes.
slavery system, literally,
Yes. Yes.
And so we all have our own like analysis to do, I think,
Mhm,
about,
mhm.
where are we? What age, are we? What is our status in terms of, do we our children or not having children, being in
Yeah.
relationship, not? There's implications at all levels.
Yes.
So I think, it's not fair to point the finger and at other people and say that they're not doing it right. I think
Yes.
it's a very personal analysis
Yeah.
of ourselves.
Absolutely. I know for myself, my extrication out of certain shitsnoms has been very, very gradual. And there have been, I've had some like major altercations with shitstoms where I've given him the finger,
Yeah,
and it's like, holy moly,
yeah,
who knew? So
right.
it's like it's the dance that is such the perfect metaphor for
Mhm.
navigating the process, and we each have an individual process about what is right in our lives in terms of waltzing in and out of the matrix, and unhooking, unplugging from certain
Yeah,
uh matrix things. So one size does not fit all, kid.
right. And I think the mental extrication is like you mentioned, the most important.
Mm-hmm.
So I may interact with a system, and yet I'm aware it doesn't have the power over me.
Yes.
And and
Perfect.
I'm not going to be like so stressed out because
Yes.
I'm late on something. I talk to many people and I
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
where they have been so programmed to jump when the system says jump, and then become so anxious
Yeah.
about breaking a rule and
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah.
And I'm like over that.
Yeah.
I'm
So
you
me
know
too. Me too. I
and
am so over it.
I do not let it take my mental space
Yeah.
of my emotion, my anxiety.
Yeah.
I do get mad and I get irritated that I'm, with certain interactions still, and I'm more likely to speak up to people
Mm-hmm.
and make some comments about it, to hopefully bring a little awareness,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to them as well, and to shake it up a little bit
Yeah.
or a lot. But I tend to go through, I tend to seek a certain level of flow and harmony as I go through my life
Love
and
it. Yeah.
relationships.
Those are my mantras.
Yeah.
Flow, harmony.
Yeah.
I'm into it. Yeah.
And truthfulness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
honesty and
Yeah.
authenticity. And so I there's all of this like really scary stuff going on and discouraging, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And
Yes.
I keep coming back to, okay, we could feel like we could get swallowed up
Mm-hmm.
it all, and we could feel very small. But we have, untapped power and potential, and all we can do is come back to ourselves
Yes.
and just keep cultivating our consciousness and our gifts and our strength and our power as human beings, and learning about ourselves and how we can then magnetize, other people in our life. And when we can
Yeah.
join hands
Yeah.
and, connect and harmonize in the same direction.
Yes.
That's beautiful, and
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, that's
And
a beautiful collaboration.
yeah,
And we don't have to immerse ourselves in the fear porn,
yes,
because it's like and I know for myself, I've seen more things that I would love to unsee just
yeah,
based in, my work with the survivors of trafficking. It's like I'm never going to not be able to unsee that. I'm not going to unsee it. It happened. And I know for myself, there was a point where I would like recall certain trips, certain places that were so horrific, where I would start feeling my life force getting sucked down and this rage taking over my entire being. And I remember making a decision, no more. That
mm-hmm.
that is not the universe that I want to live in. And then also having to navigate people accusing me of turning my back on evil. It's like, no, I'm not turning my back on evil. I know it exists, and I am advocating for something else.
Yeah, I think sometimes we may have a phase in our life where we totally dive into the muck where all the reptiles are lurking and it's really intense. I've done, crisis mental health work in the streets, and and it can be very intense. There are people who are doing frontline work, intense work for years on end, like that aren't getting at all the recognition for this intensity. And sometimes I see folks who are doing it to the point of their own detriment, of wearing themselves out. And I'm like, no, we're not here to be martyrs entirely. We're here to align with our purpose and do work in this world and be dogged in that direction. But on that path, it's really okay. We need to take care of ourselves as our tool. And when we get the signals that it's too much, sometimes we need to back out. We can find a different road, a different approach, a different path, so we don't burn out.
Yeah, that's what's happened for me. I had to step down from a lot of the groups that I was holding a chair seat on. It's like, I'm not signing up for this. I'm resigning.
Yeah.
And I resigned from 7 in 1 year. And it was a necessity for me. I was drowning in the negativity and the horror of it. And I actually want to burst out crying right now, because I still feel the enormity of the intentionality of these organizations, but I can't do it. And every now and again, I just got a job offer, and it's funny, an NGO to oversee actual accounting of trafficking. It's like, hi, no, no, no. And the dangle of a lot of money to do that. And it's like, it's a reminder. Do you want to go there again? No.
Yeah. My struggle is I work with a lot of folks, in the lower economic level of the, who've been through hell and back a lot, and my heart is always goes to the underdogs, and yet in my effort to kind of disconnect from the system and the government, I'm not wanting to use government insurances. So I'm wanting to lead away, which I harbor a little guilt about that, because I feel like I'm going to abandon my people, they're there. And yet I'm really not. I'm just sort of shifting gears and addressing the actual causes of theirs that led to the suffering.
Yes.
That's leading to the suffering for so many people, and starting to become even more consuming, of people. And now I'm like, no, I want to go after the real root causes of
Yes.
this. I don't
And
want to
to
just
empower them in terms of shifting their mindsets.
yes. Yeah, and working to empower, yeah, it is really an empowerment process of people. And I think I can feel good about the work I've been doing, and I have no regrets. My work has always felt very much like a calling and has had its own sort of weird little pathways that I've really felt in the last, more than the last decade. I've been really doing my path. And yet it's time now to shift it. Now I want to be more of a teacher, and I want to start to influence larger numbers of people, not just the one-on-ones.
Yes.
And so my funnel, my work in the great work movement. So we have the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference, the funnel, which I'm on the team of people that has kind of gotten that going. And I did a couple presentations for that. I'm preparing my next presentation, which will be on trauma, understanding trauma and its effects. So I decided, I need to bring where my sort of expertise is, my work, and bring that into this movement more.
Beautiful.
So, right. So I'm going to be doing more of that. And then I'll be also talking at the Seed 5 event. And I've got another presentation lined up for that, which will address a lot more of the healing path of women. I'm excited about that. I have my website is AliveThrive.life. I have a foundational kind of, series called Alive and Thriving, which is just packed with tons of information. It's a bit of a lot of stuff. You can kind of go through it bit by bit, and
love it.
And then now I'm working with Derek Bartolicelli, doing Dissolving the Divide podcast. Yes, and that's been so fun. And, it's just the world is expanding. So Chris Jansen and I have a project in the works called Awake at the Lake. So he and I have these wonderful adventures out in nature, hiking or on our paddle boards, and we have these deep philosophical conversations, and we're both very driven to be on this path. So we're gonna start to videotape more of our conversations and our experiences and bring them together in a kind of a podcast.
So
that I think will be fun and a little different, not just sitting, in my office, but out in nature. And so there's a lot of little projects in the works.
You have some wonderful collaborations with these great men.
I love it. I
love it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. And I appreciate this too with you, Maria. It's really wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. This has been like really a fabulous, delightful, just jam-packed conversation where we just covered all kinds of stuff and went into that feminine flow and just rocked it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I really love the connections with women in my life because there is a level of authentic sharing that can happen between women that doesn't really happen as easily.
Yeah. We have a mutuality, and it seems to me, just in hindsight, to a lot of my experiences being on other podcasts and the sort of in the matrix divide of women, the fake feminists, the neo-feminism, the man-haters, the goddess entrepreneurs who are, only in Victoria's Secret outfits. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of frightening, and then they have me on. I mean, that's been one of my superpowers. It's like being on these mainstream platforms. And then all of a sudden I open my mouth and they're like, uh-oh, she's not one of us. But that's part of it, is that we need to, quote unquote, infiltrate in these mainstream arenas where there is this sort of narrative that really sets, in my personal opinion, women back to fight amongst themselves, for the coveted man often, or the coveted man-like position, or dividing ourselves against our men and our brothers. So you know, I really am been working on the up leveling of my connections with women, you know, because I'm not a fighter in that respect. It's like, come on, you know, we need to gather together and really, really learn to collaborate. I mean, that is the new creation, is the feminine way of collaboration, not competition.
Right. And
And
cultivate
really
that
moving that.
sisterhood, connect in that kernel of like our shared knowing of
Yes.
of our experience as women in this world and
Yes.
our hearts,
Yeah. Yeah.
and see each other not as competitors, but how we can really synergize our energies to create some real beauty in the world, and just be part of the healing of men as
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
rather than being angry
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the men, but to
And
help
we're not
with.
giving a pass to any of the atrocities that we have co-created with one another, you know, in our collective history as men and women and as humans. You know, we're not doing that, but we can also set a new intention of collaboration, inclusivity, in alignment with love, truth, beauty, sovereignty, natural law, the great work, all of that.
Yeah, really being somewhat pioneering in reclaiming the natural way of operating as men and women, you know, embodying the Hermetic principles
Yes.
and healing ourselves together. Yeah.
Beautiful. Do you have any parting words before we close out our time together?
Mm. Oh gosh, I just really like where we came around reaching out to each other as brothers and sisters, you know, and giving each other compassion, and promoting the dialogue, real dialogue,
Yes.
right? You know, this whole dissolving the divide theme is really important to me, because we're so polarized in so many ways. And it's through this like dialogue of facing ourselves and facing each other,
Yes.
stepping up to handle our emotions,
Mhm.
keep showing up
Yeah.
and
Yes.
growing. And just from wherever you're at, it's okay, you know, because we've all been beat up.
Yes. Well, yes, we have. And
Yeah.
thank you so much, Leslie.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Maria. Yeah,
You're
like
so welcome. You're so welcome. And like I said, we will have all of Leslie's beautiful information down in the show notes below. Do check out her work. Her work is really, really amazing. And one of the things that I really love about you, Leslie, is that you have this wealth and this depth and this breadth of experience as a mother, as father, as sacred space holder, and, you know, just navigating the realness and the rawness of our shadow selves, and immersing in the integration with the wholeness of who and what we are. And I love that your delivery is so so soft, and such a sacred landing space of safety. And I think that is like so important in this work, is to be able to have that ability to call out the bullshit, and to also have that empathy and that compassion, and the sweetness, and that beautiful heart, that beautiful sacred heart. And I just
Thank you,
I
Maria.
appreciate that so much.
I feel very seen, and it means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, my loves, that is it for today. And do check out Leslie's work. We'll have all the information below. And have a great rest of the day. Here's to your love, truth, and beauty, my divine ones. Mwah!
Thank you.